So we continue in our theme, look, he's coming with the clouds, and we are now going step by step in the chapters of the book of Revelation to look into them. Last week we have from Revelation 5, today 6. These chapters, we are just kind of giving you a summary of things that are there, but if we just want to really dig deep, we can preach one chapter for a couple of weeks because there are a lot of theological issues that are embedded in them. But I hope that what we're doing is giving you some kind of overview and understanding of God's plan for the end times and what we should expect and how we should prepare ourselves. And most importantly, one thing that this theme has done for me is I have felt some level of comfort as I read through the book of Revelation, even as we're going to see today. There's some comfort, some consolation knowing, what God has in plan for us. And that is the answer for all the problems that we have. So today, the topic I have titled this message for chapter 6 is Look Who is in Charge. Look who is in charge. That's the topic for today. I didn't even think about that when I did that song, when I did this, the topic, but look who is in charge. Last Sunday, I was in a meeting. This is a meeting of mostly people from a theological background. And the question arose about what in theology we call the theodicy. If God is in charge, why does bad things happen? And this is age-long question that everybody's asking. Even the atheists, they ask the question. Some of them, that's even the reason why they don't believe in God in the first place. If there's a good God, why does bad things happen? So the truth is that when we look around us even today, there are so many things that beg this question. The evil that we see, the calamity, the wickedness around us. Think about the devastation happening in Ukraine right now, and then you wonder. Last week we had a story about the lynching of a student, Deborah Samuel, in Nigeria, who in a government institution, under the allegation that she blasphemed the prophet. So when we see some of these things happen, even in our neighborhood, Chicago here, the killing, baffling level of crime and violence. During we had Mother's Day, preparing for celebration, and within the day before somebody and most to now is people and wonder in all of this. About this just for even God in his church, in the early church, after the Pentecost, the bad things that happened to them. John himself, who wrote this revelation, who saw this revelation, saw it. He said, I was on the island of Patmos. Island of Patmos was where the powers that be, the Roman Empire, used to banish people. So he was banished. The tradition tells us that they have tried severally to kill him in different ways. They couldn't, so they banished him on the island to die. But while he was there, the Lord came to him and opened his eyes to see. So I believe that the intense persecution that churches, these people were going through, even though that some of them gladly gave themselves over to be persecuted, some of them gave themselves over to be killed, some of them boldly proclaimed their faith without whimpering. Yet, when we see how Jesus was addressing them in this letter, especially in chapter 2 and 3 that we read, some of them had begun to compromise their faith. Some of them had begun to shake. And I believe there are some who are asking questions. Where is God? What did I sign up for in this situation? And I believe that the whole point of the book of Revelation was to disabuse that and to show the church and us today categorically who is he that is in charge. Who is he that is in charge? So from the first introduction of the Son of Man in chapter 1, verses 12 to 16, the way Jesus was introduced, his glory, his power, the majesty that surround his introduction in chapter 1, Jesus began to show who he is. He is identified as the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. So the stage was actually set from chapter 1 to answer this question. Then coming to chapter 4 that was preached 2 weeks ago, then John began to see, his eyes was open, he began to see things that were happening in the heavenly realm. So he saw the seat of power, and chapter 4 talked about how he saw a throne, and there was someone who was sitting, and there were other thrones that were surrounding this throne, the throne of God. The throne that was where somebody was seated, he didn't say who this person was, but he said there was a throne and there were other thrones. So a throne is connected with what? Power. Throne is connected with sovereignty, is connected with rulership. That is what throne is. And that's why even in the earthly realm, when people build their thrones, they build it high. That's why when you go to see a king, he is seated high, you are low, to show the differential, the power differential. But this one is even different, that this throne in this one, it will all the way in heaven. The earth or everything else. Before elders around this other do down the fall this feet down. Just when you put your crown up, it's an acknowledgement, it's a surrender. It's worship. It's whatever you can call it. So now we're beginning to see who is in charge, the power, who has the power, even from there. And when they do that, they say, you are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory, honor, and power. Now, when you read the book of Revelation, pay attention to the word power. Occurrence of that word, honor and power. These are things that are ascribed to rulership. These are things that are ascribed to reign, to power. So the unnamed occupant of this throne, I will tell you who that person is. It's God the Father. Now, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, when I preached from Daniel 7, the whole, we saw, especially in verses 9 to 10, where the throne was set. And they said the Ancient of Days came and took his seat. And then there was an elaborate description of him if you read that portion and also read the elaborate description of Jesus in chapter 1, and then come to chapter 4 and also see how this person was described, you can see that there is that synergy, the connection between what Daniel is saying in the Old Testament and what John was seeing in this revelation. So the Ancient of Days is one who sits on the throne. How do we know this? Because in chapter 5, we were introduced to the Lamb. The chapter 5 that was preached last week. So in chapter 4, we were introduced to the one who sat on the throne. He never used the name, but he said there was a throne and there's someone who sat on it. Even in chapter 5 also, is also used only as the one who sat on the throne. But when we come to chapter 5, we saw that there is a different entity, a being who was identified as the Lamb that was standing in the middle of all these heavenly things happening. And the question was asked because at the right hand of him who sat on the throne, there was a scroll. And our brother beautifully presented that chapter last week. But the question is, who is worthy to go take that scroll with 7 seals and open it? And there was none that was found. If you remember, John began to weep, but he was comforted. Now you can see how the power dynamic in Revelation is playing out. And now there was one who was like a lamb that had been slain, and he was pointed at as the one who is worthy to go and take that scroll and unseal it. If you go back to Daniel chapter 7, from 14, verse 14, I think. After the Ancient of Days took his seat, we heard that there was someone who came who is like the Son of Man in the cloud, coming in clouds. And he came and he was given his place. And what happened? He was given authority. And all the powers of the kingdoms were taken and given to him. And he became the author of the universe. So we of Revelation, we see the Lamb approach the throne, the ultimate seat of power, only receive the screw power, as the seal, things were happening, being put in place, things were unfolded, happening. So now we zoom into chapter 6 and begin by the unsealing of the seal. So the one who was found worthy to take the scroll and open the seals in chapter 5, verses 2, 5, 9, and 10, he began to open the seal one after another. So the opening of the seal marks the beginning of the sequence of events, end time events, things that will end up bringing the world to an end. So this event will begin gradually, but it will pick up. As you read through the stories, it began gradually, but it's going to pick up. The intensity is going to pick up along the way. So at this point, only the seals were being opened. The scroll is not yet open yet. But even the seal on the scroll is power-packed. When we receive gifts on Christmas, beautifully wrapped gifts, sometimes you might just admire the wrapping, but you don't care. You don't really care. What do? You just yank it out, and because you're looking for the real thing. but not in this case. The seal itself is not to be taken for granted. The seals, the 7 seals that were on this thing have purpose. Even before you get to opening the scroll itself. And the reason why it was not anyone else, it's not anybody that could do that. So he began to open the seals. In this chapter, we got to the 6th seal. The 7th seal was not opened until chapter 8, verse 1. So just to let you know the context. So the first 4 seals are earthly judgments depicted by 4 horse riders. The color of each horse represents the character of his rider or the kind of plague that it will inflict on the people. So the first horse is white. White symbolizes conquest. Now, I want to clarify some things for you, because when you read further in this Revelation, you will see that white occurs in some other places, and these are a little bit different. The white here is not the white of righteousness. In other places, it's going to be white of righteousness. Even here in this chapter, later in this chapter, we're going to see the white of purity, the white of righteousness. But the white here is not that. Some people see it as that, say that it's Christ who was riding this horse. But I don't think so. I align with some other commentators who don't think that this is Christ, because when you look at the sequence of what is happening, these 4 horses have something in common, and it couldn't be Christ doing this kind of thing. Okay, so just to say, but there's conquest in this. So this person was given power to go and conquer the world. So some people think, spirit is Christ, some others say Antichrist, but I go with the thought that this is the spirit of conquest. Okay, so what does this mean? There is, like somebody say, it starts with what, we human beings have this lust for power. And wherever you look around today, whatever is happening in Ukraine or in Nigeria or United States, it is the desire for power. And sometimes what God does is to give us over to our inclinations, human inclinations. When we what we lost after, God abandoned us to that. So this represents war and conquest. And if you look at the power dynamics of the world, right from time immemorial, it is war, conquer, subdue, build kingdom. So this is what this first horse represents. Okay, but then you go from there. After the second horse is fiery red, or is red. Some say fiery red. Represent blood, blood shed. So, and this rider was given even a sword. Kill, destroy. And that's how human evil progress. People, even people that you have to come to power, what do? When they establish themselves, what do? They turn around and they kill those who supported them, and then in that way, they establish themselves. They establish themselves. They establish their power. It's fun, my heart. Human use that money to employ 1,000 people and pay them 200,000 Nigerian money for 33 years. Wow. And that they will have over 500 or whatever million left, and they will use it, they can use it to build hospitals and health centers all over the place. This is a country where children are going to school under the tree. This is a country where there are so many people now living in IDP camps. And yet, one person can steal that much. This is a country where one party was selling nomination form for 100 million, and a lot of people just put hand in their money and bought those farms. And they know that they were never going to even contest or even win that election. Some of them have already withdrawn, but if you can spare 100 million in Naira, that will tell you, this is what power does, subjugate. So describing this, so let me go to the fourth one. The fourth horse is pale, death, represents death, pale, ashy, the death people are ashy. So the rider is death, followed closely by Hades. Hades in Hebrew is a word called Sheol. Sheol is grave. So death and grave. So it's all about destruction. It's all about destruction. Grant Osborne, a commentator, New Testament commentator, said that the first horse seal centered on human depravity. Okay, so it progresses from the loss of power to self-destruction. He says that God allows human sins to go full cycle, ending in self-destruction. Some other commentators have likened the four horses to the four kingdoms of the book of Daniel. Remember when we talk about the four kingdoms, four winds, in Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 4. Also, if you look at Zechariah, the book of Zechariah 1, 7 to 11, there's also this vision of four horses that has, this almost similar color. Two are red, one is white, and the other one I think is black. Anyway, where is all these things leading to? And this is a difficult question, though. One thing that is very clear from the opening of this scroll is that God is in control. God is in control. For me, that's a good news. For some other person, it might be a bad news. It's like, why will God be there and this is happening if he's in control? But God is in control. And I think that is one thing that God wants John and the church to know without any doubt, that he is in control. No matter what is going on, he has a plan. He has a plan and he is working that plan out. And he opened his eyes and John will say, I look. This every situation, that is what a comfort that is a focus. My church has begun even through human cost. All over the world.